Hello everyone, this is my presentation on carbidopa and how it is used for treatment in Parkinson's disease. So a little overview of Parkinson's disease. It's a disorder that affects the nervous system and causes issues with movement. Symptoms can start gradually, with the tremor in one hand being the most identifiable. This disorder can also lead to stiffness and slowing of movement over time. In the early stages, there are issues with showing emotion on your face. Arms might swing when you're walking involuntarily, and speech may become soft or slurred. As the condition progresses, these symptoms can worsen. There's no cure, but there are medications that can help improve the symptoms. Um, these symptoms include tremors, which I just mentioned, which are shaking that begins in a limb, normally a hand. Slowed movement, over time movement slows, and simple tasks can become difficult and time consuming. Rigid muscles, which is muscle stiffness in any part of the body that can be painful and limits the range of motion, so it's hard for people with Parkinson's to do everyday activities. So a lot of times they have to have someone help them in order to be able to perform these tasks. They have impaired posture and balance, which means they can either have like a stooped posture and they have problems with balance. Loss of automatic movements, which is the decrease in the ability to perform unconscious movements like blinking, smiling, or again, the swinging arms when walking. Speech changes, again, they can slur or hesitate before speaking, and they sound monotone because they don't have the inclinations in their speech that normal people have that don't have Parkinson's. And they can have changes in their writing, which causes difficulty with their writing, and they might write much smaller because it's harder for them to control their movements, so they can't write as much. The complications that arise from these symptoms and from Parkinson's itself are thinking difficulties, depression, and emotional changes with not being able to perform tasks on their own, swallowing problems due to that muscle rigidness that occurs, issues with chewing, again with the muscles, and eating, sleep disorders, bladder problems, constipation, changes in blood pressure, fatigue, dysfunction with smell, pain, just generalized pain all over from the muscles being rigid, not being able to move as easily as they normally been able to, and sexual dysfunction. And over here on the side is just a diagram that shows like how Parkinson's affects the body at a more molecular cellular level, where it breaks down the proteins, and that's where it affects the brain and the nervous system. Carbidopa is an anhydrous laboratory isomer of a synthetic derivative of a neurotransmitter dopamine. It's also a peripheral dopa decarboxylase inhibitor, which is used as an adjunct with levodopa to prevent degradation of levodopa to dopamine in the extracerebral tissue, which is in the brain. It doesn't penetrate the blood-brain barrier, so there's no interference with the metabolism of levodopa and the active neurotransmitter dopamine in the central nervous system. When there are high concentrations of dopamine in the brain, this is what allows it to inhibit the effects of Parkinson's. And over here is just the structural compound of carbidopa, which is the drug that's helped to use to help alleviate the symptoms of Parkinson's. It works by being converted to dopamine in the brain. It's a decarboxylase inhibitor, and it prevents levodopa from being broken down before it reaches the brain. Carbidopa is used in combination with levodopa to prevent the breakdown of it in the bloodstream, so more is able to enter the brain. Carbidopa can also help reduce the side effects of nausea and vomiting that come from when people are just taking levodopa by itself. And over here is a diagram that shows how these drugs kind of interact with the brain and kind of help stop this breakdown of levodopa, which is what is introduced to the brain to help alleviate the symptoms of Parkinson's. And then we move on to X-ray crystallography. So over here is actually the bound structure of carbidopine, and you can just see what the molecule actually looks like. If we zoom in, you can see, let me move it, sorry, kind of see the structure and how everything is organized. So this is what that molecule looks like on a cellular level. And this is the Chimera program that I'm using, so you can put any kind of molecule in here and kind of play around with it, see how it's made structurally. if you want to look and just see like a certain aspect of it, you can zoom in and just see how it's connected, how the compounds are connected here. And then we can bring the ribbons back, show them, and then you can see kind of how all of those are intertwined together to form the entire molecule. X-ray crystallography is currently the most favored technique. It's used to determine the structure of proteins and biological macromolecules, which is what this molecule is showing over here. The purpose of this technique is to obtain a 3D molecular structure from a crystal. A highly concentrated, purified sample is crystallized, and then those crystals are exposed to an X-ray beam. And the diffraction patterns that result of this beam are processed and allow us to collect data on how the crystals are packed and the size of the unit that forms from the crystals. So this diagram down here is just showing you how those beams are refracted off of a certain part, and then those refractions help us identify how the structure is formed from the crystals. So you can see they kind of come through here and they bounce off of this screen, and then that shows us how the crystallized form is made. And then here I just have the articles that I saw and did my research with that show all this information that I've collected. I hope you enjoy this presentation. I hope it gives you a little bit better understanding of how carbidopa works in the brain to help kind of alleviate the symptoms of Parkinson's and the molecular structure of this compound. Thank you.